And then go to,
19th to order. Please note for the record that all commissioners are present for this meeting. I'm just going to quickly go over the logistics of this again, just for individuals that are participating by phone. Please identify yourself.
Chair, will you ask them to step away from the door?
Please identify yourself prior to speaking. Please speak loudly. Please do not use the speaker functions on your telephone. Please mute your phone unless you are speaking. And once you are done speaking, please mute your phone again. Thank you. I appreciate that. First order of business then is the approval of the minutes, the May 5th, 2020 minutes. Do we have a motion?
I make a motion to approve.
We have a motion to approve. Do we have a second?
I second that motion.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second then to approve the May 5th, 2020 minutes. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carried. Next item is the approval of the order of agenda. Is there anything that we need to have changes or additions? Hearing none, may I have a motion to approve the order of the agenda as presented?
So moved.
Okay, we have a motion to approve the agenda. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second then to approve the order of the agenda. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carried. Next item is the approval of the consent agenda, and you've all received copies of the bills, employee status changes, and overtime. Is there anything that you would like pulled for discussion?
This is Cindy. I move for the approval of the consent agenda.
Thank you. We have a motion to approve the consent agenda. Do I have a second?
You are
Okay, I have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda as presented. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
My sound went, can you hear me? My sound went dead.
Okay, I'm asking, can you hear me now?
Steve, I hear you.
I hear you too.
Okay,
Yeah, I hear you. It seems like we've lost the building.
okay.
Oh,
So can you not,
it did go kind of quiet for a second there.
this is Diane, can you hear me?
We can have our own meeting.
Oh.
Okay, we'll go home.
Yeah, I can hear you
Oh,
too, Dave.
glad we did
But
this.
Debbie, why don't you shut it off?
Can other people hear me?
Actually, we have a forum without those.
Yeah, there we
I
go.
can't hear us.
Let's
Do it
our
ourselves.
business.
Let's move on to highway.
Hello, can you hear us? Hello?
Now we can, yes.
You know, so Tom Ford, I believe you're muting me. Or all of us.
I did?
Because I heard
Oh,
you
that's not
say,
good.
yeah, don't do that anymore.
Okay, so I'm gonna reread the instructions, everybody but Tom Ford.
No, we heard
Mute
that.
yourself. I know, I'm
You heard
just,
the instructions.
Yeah,
I
Tom
know.
Ford's muting us.
but I'm saying,
Apparently I
We're
muted
all up on the
everybody.
consent agenda.
He's muting this.
okay, so we have a motion to approve the consent agenda. Do I have a second?
Right.
Yes, you have a second.
Okay, all in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, motion carried. Next item is the North Dakota Small Business Center Director, Nicole Evans. Welcome.
Good afternoon, Commissioners, and thank you for allowing me to join today. This is my 4th year with SBDC, and I like to tap in and just give you kind of some updates about how we are doing as a program, especially with small businesses. This is a very valid time, especially during our COVID issues. For those of you on the call who do not know who I am Nicole Evans, the Center Director of the Grand Forks SBDC. We do free and confidential business advising. And my main areas are in the upper right-hand corner of Region 4, which is Walsh, Nelson, Pembina, and Grand Forks County. Over the 2019 calendar year, you'll see that 207 total clients were advised. Compared to our 2018 year, we had 137. So the number has definitely gone up, as well as the hours of advising have more than doubled. The businesses created 8 on top of the 12 in 2018, and 88 new jobs were created and retained, in which this year alone in 2020, we already have 200 and 30 part-time and over 40 created jobs over this year, just alone around Grand Forks. So that's a huge thing for us. Capital formation is 3.3 million and up from 2018's numbers. I had a county breakdown below just to kind of show you the total clients that are advised just in the Grand Forks area alone, and then the rural areas around that. In 2019, the division of our regions were kind of lifted, so now it allows for some of the other out-of-town people, as far as between Fargo and Grand Forks are concerned. Some of those had rather go either south or north, which most of them head up our way. And so that's why you'll see the others, because that's kind of some of the outer sides of Grand Forks, and not necessarily in that particular county. So I just wanted to kind of show you that even in our Grand Forks area, the numbers were still higher than 2018. So that means great relationships are being formed with a solid foundation, and we're utilizing as many resources as we can in Grand Forks. Another item that was given to you prior is the 2019 annual report. You might remember that it used to be kind of an open, closed type of pamphlet. This year it is now 16 pages long. And the reason for that is to give you a really good idea of all of the places we go, the people we see, the formation of stakeholders, relationships that we have, as well as kind of our areas throughout the state before. But we also wanted to give you a breakdown of our demographics. Sometimes we just don't know, or we do, but sometimes you don't know where the industry segments are coming from or the business statuses. So you'll know over 2019, almost the same amount of startups were advised, as well as people in business. So we had a very, very outstanding 2019, and I like to see the industry segments, because sometimes we advise and then we kind of take a moment and go, oh, that's right, we're in this industry. So I was really pretty excited to see that. We also still have our program sponsors, but you'll notice the lengthy annual report just to give an idea of all the different types of businesses that we advise throughout the state of North Dakota as well, just to kind of see what's going on and how our services as a whole entire staff are. As you have reviewed it, are there any questions for me that you came up with?
Does anyone have questions for Nicole?
Yes, Nicole, I do have a question. This is Commissioner Peach. I'm wondering, with all of the COVID funding that's coming through with the CARES Act and other forms of funding at the federal level, will your organization be more involved with helping businesses with funding to kind of get back up and started again?
That's a great question, Commissioner Peach. And the answer to that is yes. SBDC was awarded a little bit of a financial support from SBA to add on a disaster assistance to SBDC. So they are specific to disaster recovery assistance, and then I will continue to move forward with all of the disaster assistance and the startups and the businesses in there. So we are heavily involved in the EIDL, the advanced PPP, and some of the END stuff that's coming out. And definitely making sure we keep that communication open to keep these businesses moving forward with their employees and their businesses.
Great, I'm glad to hear that. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Any other questions for Nicole? I loved your handout. It was very interesting. Good to see.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, did you have anything else for us?
No, I just wanted to say thank you so much. With my time at SBDC for the last 4 years, I absolutely thank you guys for the support of our program. It means a lot for me, coming from a small rural town. I definitely am supporting all the troopers out there, and I'm definitely one of their biggest cheerleaders. So I just wanted to say thank you for that.
Okay, and
Thank
on
you.
behalf of the commission, I want to extend a thank you from us as well. Your numbers are awesome, and based on your handout, you're doing wonderful things. So we do appreciate that, and we appreciate the update.
Absolutely, thank you.
All right, thank you. Okay, the next item then is public health, and I believe we have Deb Swanson. Deb, are you on the phone?
Good afternoon. Yes, I'm actually in your Zoom meeting room.
Okay, welcome.
Thank you. And thank you very much, commissioners, and a special thanks to Debbie Nelson for your technology assistance here. And my apologies for not getting you a presentation sooner than today, but I did want you to have the latest information relative to the COVID-19 update from Grand Forks Public Health Department. I'll let Debbie advance to the next slide. I appreciate that you can do this for me because I'm participating on my iPad, so it works better when you share the content. This first slide is the statewide coronavirus overview, and you can see that there were 63 positive test results today in North Dakota out of a total of 1,990. A new piece of information just underneath that 1,990 is the test results are now broken out by new individuals tested and individuals retested. And the main reason for this is that we now are retesting both residents and staff in long-term care facilities as well as some healthcare providers prior to returning to work. So in order to ensure that we're giving accurate information, that's now being broken out in those two categories. You can see that Grand Forks County is one of 3 dark red counties because we have more than 100 cases. The total positive cases in our state is 1,994. And then you can see all the other data from the dashboard that's there on that slide. If you advance to the next one, please, Debbie. This is Grand Forks County overview. All of our information is reported by county, and the total tests for Grand Forks County, now this is all tests, is 5,178, or 9% of all North Dakota tests to date. And there have been 317, which represents 16% of all North Dakota cases. I always like to use the ballpark figure of between 9 and 11% as our population for the state, so we're a little overrepresented there. And we did have 28 cases reported in the last week since last Tuesday, but none as of yesterday or today. There were 0. A total of 211 people have recovered, which means they have completed that period of isolation, and then 3 deaths have occurred in Grand Forks County. You can go to the next slide. This is just, you've seen this before, just a little bit more information about the sources of exposure. This is also available on the North Dakota Department of Health website, and you can see there the various categories. Confirmed travel and possible travel have really dropped off now that we don't have travel restrictions anymore, and it hasn't been as significant of a source, but that could change if we do find that people are traveling to other areas of the country in the weeks ahead. Community spread continues to be the largest percent. And then the next slide. I really wanted to spend most of my time today telling you what we are doing at Grand Forks Public Health Department and then answer any questions that you might have. So first of all, we provide leadership for what was a local joint information that was center that was established, or we call it a JIC, and they are responsible for news conference planning, social media message development, coordination with other community partners, and a number of other things. And this has been really helpful because it really helps us tailor messages specific to what is happening in Grand Forks County. And then you hear a lot about contact tracing, and that is where a significant amount of our time and attention has been placed. And currently, this number has dropped down a little bit. We have 6 staff that are engaged in this, and that's largely because we've had to move staff to other responsibilities. And especially as we have restarting activities, the Environmental Health Division has gotten very busy with those activities, which I'll talk about in a moment. This is as of yesterday. We were following 11 positive cases, 102 were recovered, and 47 close contacts with 257 released from quarantine. Now you might ask why those numbers don't match up with our total cases, and that's because some of our contact tracing efforts are done by other state and regional partners, such as local health departments in our region, Spectra Health, which is located across the street from the county office building, NDSU and UND MTH students, and UND Student Health Service personnel. And they've all been taking some of our cases and following up with the contact tracing. But because it's one database, it can be shared across all contact tracers. It's a confidential process, but we can do queries within there if we need to find out specific information relative to clusters. And then you can go to the next slide. Continuing on, our public health response is our quarantine and isolation of individuals experiencing homelessness and domestic violence. And this includes a variety of activities like intake, which is done by the zone, formerly Grand Forks County Social Services. Old habits die hard for me, so I still want to call it that, but I know they have a new name. And case management, shelter, food delivery, transportation, behavioral health services, and so on. And about 20 individuals have received these services, and these have been primarily individuals within the region who have needed housing or shelter because they lived in a cockpit setting or were homeless or may not have been able to safely quarantine or isolate in their own home. And there you can see our list of partners, including the Northeast Human Service Zone and Northeast Human Service Center, the Health Department, the city, and Grand Forks County. And we're fortunate that our emergency manager has been involved in this effort and was very early on and continues to help us with some various logistics from time to time. And then you can go to the next slide. As I mentioned before, our environmental health division has been primarily involved with the North Dakota Grand Forks Smart Restart, and they have responsibility for local businesses that are licensed. Now, most of these are within the city of Grand Forks. County bars and restaurants would be licensed by the state of North Dakota, but we have a close working relationship with the individuals that do that licensing and inspections, and so we've provided information as necessary on how to safely reopen. Information was also provided to the chamber, to media outlets and social media about what the guidelines are for reopening safely. And then we have conducted a few workplace assessments. And then addressing public concerns. There have been a few comments that have come in. People have asked questions, wondered about whether a business was operating safely. So we've had to do some follow-up with various places. And then increased fit testing requests have come in as restart begins. And those have involved group homes, dental offices, the paratransit drivers that are part of cities, area transit, are doing some transportation for our non-congregate shelter, and they all had to have their personal protective equipment fit tested for them to ensure that they will not be exposed to the virus while they are performing those activities. And then next slide, please. Probably the most visible, because it seems to get the most media attention, is our participation in mass and targeted testing events. And our staff have been utilized in a variety of positions at 3 events that have been held April 16th, April 23rd, and May 14th. And we also did some targeted testing for fire department personnel. We coordinated some supplying and personal protective equipment for a testing event at St. Anne's Guest Home, and then have communicated with all long-term care facilities in Grand Forks County regarding testing. That included a Good Samaritan in Larimore and Northwood Deaconess in Northwood, and those two facilities remain COVID-free at this time. I don't know when they will be retested, but I think there's some benefit to the rural nature of some of those long-term care facilities, but we certainly want to make sure that they continue to test and that they continue to keep in place all of the measures that they have to protect that vulnerable population. I do want to also give a shout out for the county emergency manager on the mass testing events, because Kari's been right there with us, serving in the command role at some of the events, and has provided a lot of the logistics for them to acquiring things like portable toilets and hand washing stations, and ensuring that everything was conducted smoothly. So we greatly appreciated that partnership. Even though the National Guard comes in and does all the testing, we are responsible for local logistics. So our unified command structure is working pretty well, I think, in Grand Forks County. And then the next slide, you may be aware that we have a representative on the group that's looking at how to reopen county facilities like the county office building and the courthouse and others, and that representative is Dustin Johnson. And our staff have met with the consultant who's looking at any of the architectural features that might need to be put in place for our particular offices on the 3rd floor. And then we are continuing and restarting some of our public health services. So we've continued to provide TB medications to individuals in the county that need them. That's something that can't be interrupted. Jail nursing, as you know, continues. We have 2 staff that are out there, plus 1 nursing supervisor that's been spending a lot of time out there. And then home visits. Most of our home visits are actually in the county right now versus the city. Some harm reduction services, and then now our environmental health staff are getting requests for septic plan review and inspections. And this is something we do on a regional basis, but because construction season is here, we felt that it was important to make sure that our staff that does that work is available. And then our nuisance inspections are a little bit more limited, but we are providing some guidance for pools and special events. And then our mosquito control program will be up and running, as well as our continuation of disease surveillance. What we're looking to do as a health department in the future is restore vaccination services to the extent that we can once we reopen, or ensuring that they're available in the community. So we know Northwood Deaconess has them available, as well as Larimore, in Larimore at Spectra Health. And then, of course, within the city of Grand Forks, there's a variety of ways people can get vaccinations, but we are really concerned about vaccination levels dropping off. And in fact, letters went out to schools yesterday just to remind them that even though there's a pandemic, they still have school entry requirements. We'll be focusing a lot on how to deliver seasonal flu vaccines, making sure that we keep proper physical distancing and safety during those events. And then, of course, once a vaccine for SARS-CoV-2 or COVID-19, as the disease is called, is available, and that will likely require some large-scale efforts to deliver a vaccine when it's here. And then, of course, routine restaurant and pool inspections and other public health services whenever they're safe to do those. I think that concludes. There's just a couple more slides for your information. I won't go through them, but they are just a repeat of the hotline information that I provided before, and then resources if you want to spend any time on resources. And I would yield the rest of my time to questions from the commission. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Swanson. Does anyone have questions for Ms. Swanson?
Madam Chair,
Yes, ma'am.
this is Cindy. I have a couple of questions for Debbie.
Yes, go ahead.
Debbie, as we move on, and obviously more and more people are becoming a little bit more mobile, bars and restaurants are opening up. I think some of our population are tired of being, shelter in place. Are you concerned about, obviously I haven't been out much, but I'm hearing that the use of masks is limited. Some people are using them, some are not. Are you concerned about the numbers of positive tests continuing to rise because people are becoming more mobile?
Well, yes, I sure am. As a public health professional, we know that masks can be very, very beneficial. We didn't have that message early on in this pandemic, and I really think that if we had probably had more emphasis on masks in the general public. We might have been able to reduce some cases of it. Now we feel that our contact tracing, isolation, and quarantine is really helping to mitigate and contain cases. But if we do have individuals in public places that are not using masks, we could see an increase in spread. And to just bear in mind that my wearing a mask protects you and your wearing a mask protects me. So it really needs to be destigmatized, and we just need masks for all. And in fact, if you Google that, you'll see a really good video about it and how some other countries have really successfully used masks to contain the coronavirus to date. So we would like to make them more available. We're finding that there's even some protection with simple things like bandanas. But we have good supply of masks, and cloth masks are very effective too. So they really should be worn in the workplace whenever you can't be 6 feet apart. But I would say also, even if you can be 6 feet apart, it just gives you another layer of protection.
Yeah, I guess I'm really concerned because in some parts of the state, obviously the numbers are quite high, and it's almost 1 person to every 10 people that are in highly populated areas that somebody's got COVID. And so I'm just concerned about that continuing to spread as people are becoming a little bit more relaxing in following some of the protocols.
I would agree. It's not the time for complacency at all.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Ms. Swanson?
Madam Chair, this is Dave.
Yes, Dave, go ahead.
Hello, Debbie. Couple of things. I know Cass County is well in the lead in cases, but are we still number 2 in Grand Forks County?
We are still number 2, both in cases as well as cases per 100,000, which is an epidemiological measure that we frequently do. And
right.
I haven't looked at the numbers exactly, but Cass County is something in the 600s per 100,000, and we're in the middle 400s per 100,000.
Okay.
So 2 leading indicators.
And why I'm interested in that is because we're talking about opening some things. Are you going to be staying on the meeting through the discussion on the Speedway, the racing thing, which is the next, I think it might be the next agenda item? Would you still be able to, because I've got some questions about what they're going to do with people in the stands and that sort of thing.
Sure, I can remain on for a little while to listen to that discussion. I've heard a little bit about the fact that the emergency manager has been working real closely with them and with the commission, their plans. And yes, we absolutely would want to see them put in place everything that is outlined in the guidance for large events and gatherings. But I think it's really important to remember that things are different across North Dakota, and we do have some counties with very low number of cases and some with higher. And it's a lagging indicator when you have test results. It means the virus is already out there and has spread. So we really need to be very cognizant of the prevention messages.
Right. What county is next after Grand Forks? It would be Burley County, and then hardly any in many of the other counties. Is that how it works? You know, I don't have that latest chart for you guys. We're sending out the county by county with all of the graphs, and I haven't seen that for a few days.
I will hop on the website and look. I'm pretty sure Burley County is next in terms of number of cases, but there's a couple of low density counties that are actually high in their case per 100,000 just because they have fewer residents. And I believe those are Montreal and Sloat County.
Okay. Well, on the discussion on masks, I'm seeing very limited mask usage in Northwood. I live in Northwood. And those of us in the relevant age group seem to be wearing them, but boy, I go to the post office, I might be the only one, wait outside until the other 8 or 9 leave, because they're not afraid for themselves, you see. And the message of wearing a mask to protect others seems to be lagging. So I don't know how to get that out. I see it on the news more and more, and that's good.
That's good information for me to bring back to our Joint Information Center and see if there's more that we can do in Northwood and in other communities in Grand Forks County.
All the people who work at the NDAC wear them. I mean, that's just common. But a lot of folks who look at no cases here, just seem to think it might skip us, and it's only 32 miles away in Grand Forks, and it's 90 miles to Fargo, and it can happen everywhere. So, well, thanks for that. No, we just wanted to know how we stood still.
Thank you, sir. Any other questions for Ms. Swanson? I have a question. You know, what are you hearing, or what are your thoughts on information that's out there as it relates to children showing signs of illness supposedly related to COVID?
What I know is that there is a syndrome similar to Kawasaki syndrome, it's called, that has presented itself in several areas across the nation that appears to occur alongside of COVID infection with children. And it's a multi-system type of disease progression, so to speak. Children rebound from it and they can get better, but there can be some complications. There was a webinar on it today that I wasn't able to attend due to some other commitments, but I will see if I can get the slides from it and pass them along to you. They might be fairly clinical, but it is something that's a little bit concerning because the message has always been that the disease can be fairly mild in children. And now what we're finding is that there's this new constellation of a disease pattern that we need to be careful about. So I don't have a great deal more information than that, and I'm not aware that we've seen any cases in North Dakota.
Okay, well, it's you know, it's out there in the media, and so you often wonder. But is this would this be tied to children that had been diagnosed with COVID-19 or not? They had the disease, or they had been diagnosed as being positive, and then these are the end results of that is?
I'll have to get you more information on how it seems to be presenting because I'm not exactly certain.
Okay.
I believe it can actually be in children who had been infected and then their infection resolved, and then this occurred later on.
Okay, well, I appreciate any information. It's questions that I've gotten from the public, and so I haven't seen a whole lot on it, but I'm aware of it. So that there's information like that out there. So also just want to thank you for sending your department for sending the COVID-19 situational reports too. That's interesting information to receive, and you folks are very, very busy. So any other final comments for us?
Madam Chair, this is Tom. I've got a question.
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Debbie, you know, I follow your reports and cards that come out every day, and I really appreciate that. And I noticed that during the past week, our positive cases have been lower, which is a good thing. But in talking with Kari, and I think maybe you could tell us more about that, I think that our cases that are being processed have been lower during the past week, which probably gives us some false hopes that it's disappearing in the community. Is that fair to say?
I think that's fair to say.
Okay. Do you know how many cases have been processed for us during the past week? Roughly.
I can't speak to this past week, but I know that the week before, Altru did 296 tests and had 14 that were positive. And then we did a testing event that had 475, and I just recently learned that there were 8 positive from that 475. So that's quite a drop, which is a good thing, but we don't have a real good sense of everybody that attended that event. what we do know is that people that get tested at Ultra have symptoms, so they would have a higher positivity rate naturally because they're already exhibiting symptoms of the disease. But I always remind people that this is a novel virus and none of us has any immunity to it in any way, shape, or form. And so we are all susceptible to it, and some will have greater health consequences as a result of it. And while we can do a lot to mitigate it, and I understand the urgency to return things to normal, we still are all susceptible to the virus, and we are its host, and it will find a way to infect us if it can, and if we're not really careful about doing all the prevention measures.
Any other questions?
Thank you. No, thank you. I appreciate that information. I think Kari told me yesterday that the numbers from the big event hadn't come in as of yesterday, so we'll probably see those tomorrow or this week, but I appreciate it. Thank you.
Well, it's amazing that the people that see those numbers, and when they see that we don't have, or we've got low numbers, it's like we don't have a problem, you know, and it bothers me that happens. So can I don't want to put you on the spot on anything, but I'm just curious because I don't have the information. Again, it's information that people ask of me, or questions people ask of me. And so all I'm looking for is a yes or no. I don't need any details or specific, but has LM Wind Power opened yet?
I believe they were planning to open this week, and they spent a significant amount of time on developing a plan for reopening, and also for bringing people back very slowly and doing a lot of training and a lot of physical changes to their operation. That's what I do know.
Okay. And then how about with Simplot? Did they ever go through a mass testing?
They did not. They chose not to. And they did close for a period of time, and then they did reopen, and I believe when they reopened, they also made some changes.
Yeah. Well, and the only reason that this individual asked is because I too thought I saw that in the Herald where they had, I know they had declined, but then I thought I had heard that they had asked to go through mass testing. So that's all I need to know on that one. So, okay, well, thank you again for your report. It's always very interesting. We appreciate the information and truly appreciate all you and your staff are doing.
Thank you.
Yep, you're welcome. Thank you. Okay, so the next item then is Kari from Emergency Management. You with us, Kari?
I am Commissioner Knopf. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I just want to let you know that with me today, I have Darren Ewald and Brad Singh from the River City Speedway. That's my first order of business to talk about tonight. You all have the River City Smart Restart proposal. I'm not going to spend a lot of time going through it. I will say that last Thursday, we had a very productive meeting out at the Speedway. We were accompanied by Commissioner Knopf, Commissioner Ross, and Sheriff Andy. And we had all of the ownership there as well. So they worked very hard on this plan. When they submitted it, it was already very solid. They had covered a lot of the CDC guidelines, and it only strengthened after that point. Through some collaboration with public health and then going back and forth with the Speedway people, I think we were able to put together what seems to be a relatively safe and slow restart for the racetrack in trying to salvage, obviously, some of their season. Some of the things that they did, they're going to televise all the races. So when they do open the season, which is tentatively set for this Friday, it would be with no fans in the stands. This is not going to be open to the public. And in fact, what Friday's race would look like is an exercise of this plan. They decided to dial back on actually opening the season and using Friday as a practice run. So I can come out there and I can observe all of the safety measures and what's working and identify choke points and talk about what we might need to tweak or change. as we proceed. They've taken some pretty extraordinary measures, I think, in marking off the stands for distancing. They're having online registration, online food ordering, so that's all going to be low touch or no touch. They're going to mark off the parking areas for the actual race teams. They're limiting each team to only 10 members. So that would include the pit crew and then any like friends or family of the driver or the pit crew up to the number of 10. Now keep in mind the Canadian border is closed. So I believe what they told me is that reduces their number of drivers by 30 or 35 cars. So most of who's going to be at the Speedway for these first weeks will actually be local drivers. So this plan, once we got it collaborated with the Speedway, we submitted it to Public Health. We've been working very closely with Dustin Johnson. He really liked the 100% mask wear of the people there, so with the exception of the driver. Those that are in the Speedway grounds are going to be having to wear masks 100% of the time. Their disinfection, they have an EPA-approved chemical that will be sprayed throughout the raceway every 2 hours, so that'll include the restrooms and any touch areas, handrails, that kind of thing. The announcer, and so they have an announcer up in a booth, and then they have a person down on the track, and they'll have to use the technical term because I don't remember what they told me, but those two people talk to each other, and they will be continually broadcasting the safety messages about distancing, about mask wear, about following the guidelines. And it's not lost on these drivers that if they don't comply, they could be risking shutting down the Speedway. So I think they're coming in hard. They're going to be very strict. This isn't any kind of plan that's relying on the sheriff or his deputies to enforce. This is going to be enforced by Raceway personnel. So I'm going to stop there, and I'm going to let Brad and Darren jump in here. But I just want you to understand that the seating capacity of this track is about 6,200 people. And they'll go through the numbers with you. I know that I included some of them in there as far as the worst case scenario being 900. But in a 6,200 seat venue, that easily fits within the guidelines of not only the CDC, but obviously the governor and his large venue guidelines that came out last Friday. I was comfortable, Dustin was comfortable. I will be out there Friday, should this pass. I will come out Friday, and there will be a couple of us that will be observing how the track operations are going to go. And then we'll reassess weekly. Obviously, once the border opens, that will change the picture. But for now, I just want you to know that these races are not open to the public. They're going to encourage fans to watch them, on TV, and just strictly keep it to the teams that are actually going to be on the ground. So if you have any questions, I'm going to stop there and just remind you that Darren and Brad are on the line. Are you not, Darren and Brad, there?
We're here. We're here if you can hear us.
We can hear you. We can hear you. So, Chair Knopf, that ends my presentation for the raceway.
All right, thanks, Kari. So Darren or Brad, do you have comments for us? Or would you prefer questions? Or both?
Why don't we start with any questions that you might have for us?
All right, so we're going to open it up for questions, commissioners.
Madam Chair, this is Dave Engle.
Hi, Dave, go ahead.
Yeah, in reading the plan, I was surprised to see that there could possibly be 900 people in that venue. And I don't care if it's 6,200 or not. That would be a lot of people. Are you talking about a very much lower number for these first few weeks?
Yeah, I mean, 900 people, normally on a Friday night, River City Speedway gets anywhere from 2,500 to to 3,000 people. And I guess, you know, after looking at Governor Burgum's guidelines, if, you know, he kept referring to talking to the Alaris Center and the Fargo Dome on 50% capacity up to 250 people. Well, if you go out to the Speedway, we have 5 separate grandstands that are separated by 20-foot plus feet, where, I mean, if you looked at it, you could fit 250 in each grandstand, 6 feet socially distanced very easily. So, yeah, the number 1,000 wouldn't look like much up there. How about that?
Well, I don't think the governor's guideline of 250 is by building. I think it's by event. If you have nearly 1,000 people coming in and going out and having some sort of interaction during the course of time, that scares me a little bit. And Kari, I'm interested in your thoughts, but that gives great potential for hotspots, even if people are being careful, I think. I would like to see no fans in the stands the first time or two myself. And I mean, fans are, of course, the ones that come along with your drivers and so on. It's the pit crews and the racers, and not filled with grandstands. But I'm interested in other thoughts on the commission.
Commissioners, any other thoughts?
This is Commissioner Rost. Chairman Knopf and myself were out there. We observed everything that was going on, what their plan is, how they're going to have distance compliance. We took pictures. They've done everything that they need to do to keep this event as safe as possible. I'm very much interested in this thing going through. I would like to see the monitoring going on to see how it goes week by week. And if necessary, the commission can review it at the first meeting in June. But I think they've gone way above. I've worked out at that racetrack for over 30 years myself. These guys are very safety conscious. They do everything they need to do to keep the public safe. And I would like to see them get the opportunity to go through with this event.
Any other comments?
Madam Chair, this is Commissioner Ball. And I appreciate all the work they've done. And I think it's an excellent plan, and I appreciate Kari for going out there and working with everyone. I do, however, agree with Commissioner Ingen right now that the maximum number on an event is 250, unless Kari can clarify for us, but it's 250, no matter the size of the venue or whatever, until some further notice from the governor's office.
Any other comments?
Madam Chair,
Yes, ma'am.
I do understand that the public health is impressed with the 100% of individuals wearing masks, with the exception of the drivers. And the work and the efforts that the Speedway representatives have gone to try to provide safety. The Speedway itself, I understand that the grandstands, the bleachers are separated, and you may think 900 people, and I'm assuming that's the max. But that's a big area to put 900 people in. I guess I too wouldn't be as concerned as long as it's being identified and that individuals are making sure that the protocols are being followed there.
Thank you, Ms. Peach.
Commissioner Knopf?
Yes, ma'am. Go ahead, Kari.
I think we also have to keep in mind that what we're dealing with here is enterprise risk management. And every time we take a step forward, every time we open a building, every time we bring staff back, every time a restaurant opens, it's measured risk. And it really does include some personal responsibility and accountability. These guys, this plan has gotten some pretty strong reviews from partners that have seen it. My task was to try to figure out if we could get the speedway open. And I think they've made some concessions, which was very helpful. They've taken suggestions. I'm not, sorry guys, but I'm not that big of a race fan, so I didn't really have a dog in this fight. But we're following on to this plan with the Horse Show Association and the Barrel Racing Association and the go-kart people. So they'll be coming before you shortly. The 900 in the stands, that's the worst case scenario if every driver brought 10 people. It rarely happens, from what I understand. Most of the people in the stands during a regular racing season are actually just fans from the community. They're not necessarily associated with the teams themselves. So we'll see what happens these next couple of Fridays if this goes forward. And I will be reporting back to the commission weekly on what we've identified, what we found, if we find any gaps, what we're going to propose to fix them, so they can salvage some of their season. It is a scary thing. You know, the virus isn't gone. We know that. It's still out there. I know Devil's Lake opened last weekend and they didn't have half of these safety measures put in place. So I think for these guys to actually take these steps and put together a plan that's this strict, says something about their intent to protect the community and still provide some form of entertainment, even if it's not going to be in person to begin with.
Madam Chair, this is Tom Ford.
Yes, Mr. Ford.
I sit on a I don't know what to call it, a COVID events committee. And the representatives on that committee is UND Athletics, the Alerus Center, the Ralph Engel Center, RENAC. There's a public health member on it, and then Mr. Phelan and myself. And the last meeting we had, I shared this plan that the Speedway gentlemen put together. As their message is, if there's any examples of the responsible plan, we'd love to see it. So I hope it's okay with Kari and the Raceway folks, but I shared it with that group, told them it was a draft, told them it needs to be endorsed by the commission. But they reviewed it and they were very complimentary of this plan, actually. And I think some of those venues might be borrowing bits and pieces from this plan for their own events. So I thought that might be a relevant comment to this conversation.
Thank you.
This is Darren, River City Speedway. You absolutely, obviously have our permission to share it, and I'm glad that you did, and I'm glad that you brought it forth. It's been a lot of hard work on behalf of a lot of great people, Kari and Public Health and commissioners that took the time to come out and check out what we put down. And I think there's been a lot of collaboration on, you know, trying to inch our way forward, so to speak. And it's, you know, I was combing through a lot of what the governor had to say, and I guess it lends itself to interpretation. I get that. Everybody can interpret it the way they want to interpret it. Keep in mind it is an outdoor venue. When you're making consideration in voting on whether or not we can move ahead and open the plan, if possible, for this upcoming Friday is, just as Kari indicated, it's a practice night. So on Friday, there isn't going to be any concessions and so on. It gives us an opportunity to, you know, dial in the guidelines and the measures that we're putting forth, and to ramp ourselves up to speed if given the opportunity to consider operating a race program the following week. Having said that, I appreciate the time, and any other questions you might have. Brad and I are here to to address those for you. So thanks for having us.
Thank you. Okay, Sheriff Schneider.
Madam Chair, members of the commission, this is Andy Schneider, the Sheriff's Office. After the governor's guidelines came out for the smart restart, obviously there was some concerns with the Max 250. Needless to say, I'm sure like many of you, I've spent countless hours reading through them, looking at the state website, seeing what the guidelines are as far as large events, following his quote unquote temperature gauge, I guess. And as far as the 250 goes, it appears when reading through those guidelines, and correct me if I'm wrong, anybody from the Department of Health or Debbie, anybody that's on, but it doesn't, I can't find that it applies a lot of clarification for open air events, such as a racetrack that's outside. And it lists other events, but it doesn't specifically list the raceway. I think short of calling the governor's office for clarification, we'd be hard pressed to see if that was part of their interpretation. I don't know if we'd get an answer on that. Other things that the racetrack has going for it, like Darren alluded to, being an open air event, no concessions. The seating in the raceway is wood, and I don't believe wood is a great transmitter of the COVID virus. Recommendations I have seen say that you don't even need to clean wood on a regular basis, so they got that going for them. But I just wanted to make sure that everybody was kind of in the loop on the governor's order. Another thing with the governor's decision that he put out, he said it's not it wasn't an executive order, and it's not a guideline from the State Department of Health officer. It was the Smart Restart Plan guidelines. So it's not enforceable. It's guidelines that they're setting forth. And I think that they probably did that most likely for situations like this, where it's hard to throw a blanket on every speedway or every event in the state of North Dakota. This isn't the fair. We don't have people standing in the lines to go on a Ferris wheel, and in this case, they're not even standing in lines to get food or beverages. So I just wanted to make sure that information was presented. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Swanson, are you still on the phone?
I am still here. I don't have anything to add that hasn't already been said.
So I'm going to put you on the spot. Would you support 900 fans versus the 250 in the governor's guidelines?
Well, I haven't studied the guidelines that closely. I've been involved in some other endeavors. But I do agree that there is room for interpretation here. I believe that 250 event is likely based on events and thinking about indoors, because I know the rush to get that done was to address graduation somewhat. But I would say that there has been a lot of work done on this plan, and the nature of the outdoor venue does lend itself to less disease transmission than an enclosed environment, and the opportunities for some physical distancing among the fans. If you get 100% compliance with masks, that'd be fantastic. That would cover people during that time that they're passing one another, or they're, walking into the venue. I think the greater risk is among the drivers' teams that might be working close to one another. So those are just my comments. I don't have the authority to approve, and Sheriff Schneider is absolutely right in that it's guidance. It's not a governor's order, and it's not a health officer order. It's guidance to help people plan things safely.
Thank you. I didn't mean to put you on the spot. Someone else have a comment?
Could I add one thing that Debbie might not understand? In the pit area, every team is separated by 10 feet. For every race team.
Yeah, I was thinking more of the race team itself. So the race team has 10, those 10 people might be in close proximate to one another, not the teams to each team, but the people on the team. Yes. Can I
interject on how that number 10 came about, and it might clarify a little bit. So, of course, any racer, they have a pit crew that comes and helps them for the night. Okay, so they also have a wife, kids, mother, father, true friends. So the idea was potentially 4 to the pits, 6 to the stands. That's where the number 10 came up. That's how that came up. So basically, they would be sitting with their family and friends, people that they're comfortable with sitting with.
Madam Chair, this is
Yes,
Dave. Can I
yes, Dave,
interject a little?
let's go. I mean,
And as I understand, well, first of all, I like racing. I haven't been to races for a number of years, but I want you guys to be there and I want you to succeed. My question though is, why do we have to have 5 or 6 more people there for the first time or two to see how it goes with the teams and everything else? You know, this is an extremely contagious virus. We don't have a treatment. We don't have a vaccine. We simply are going to get sick and you make it or you don't. That's why I wouldn't go to the event at my age and that kind of thing. But I recognize how much people want to do it. I still am concerned about why can't we just try a weekend, maybe before the next commission, and then Kari can report to us on how it seems to work. Because you're going to have people, if you've got people in the stands, you are using restrooms, and you are in close contact, and just because someone's friends with the family doesn't mean they've been doing things right all the way along. Within your nuclear family, sure, everybody lives together. But this thing can spread quickly. And we've seen a couple of instances recently where one person goes to church somewhere in the country and the next thing you know, 100 people have it. So it's a frightening virus, and I don't mean to be just a fearmonger, but I like the going even a little bit slower. I think your plan overall looks good. And there's a lot from Debbie and Kari, but my own personal view is it would be nice to not have anybody in the stands while you work out the first racing weekend or two. So that's my thought.
thank you, sir. Any other comments?
Just, yeah, this is Darren with the racetrack again. One thing that's unique about River City Speedway is not only the passion and the camaraderie and the racing community and family that it brings to the greater Grand Forks area. We value obviously all of our race teams and whatnot. The program that we run is an expensive program, and so in order for us to open up, unless we make concessions in terms of the type of race program that we wish to put on, the purse in and of itself is anywhere from, depending on how many cars show up, close to $30,000. And so, having said that, then we need to create revenue in selling pit passes through the back gate to be able to run the kind of program that people are used to and expect us to run. So just as a little perspective there, for your thought process, to shed some light on how and why it would be difficult for us to run, in a fashion where, we don't have sort of some kind of limit where we could potentially be successful enough to break even, obviously.
Thank you, Darren. Any other comments?
Madam Chair,
Yes,
it's
sir.
Commissioner Ross. I would like to make a motion that we approve the River City Speedway Smart Restart proposal to see how it goes, and maybe Kari can have a report for us at the next first commissioner meeting in June.
Okay, you've heard the motion. Do we have a second?
This is Commissioner Peach. I will second that motion.
Okay, we have a motion.
This is
And it's,
Commissioner Falk. I've got a question.
yes, hang on. So we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Mr. Falk?
Discussion, thank you. I tend to agree with going along with this, at least for the first night. I'm not sure how, if Commissioner Ross' motion might be too expansive. My question is, how many races between now and the next meeting?
2, 3.
Two, why?
Well, I stand corrected, a practice, and then, I guess what our thoughts have been is we were gonna split our program up. So, a practice night this coming Friday, and then, splitting our race program in half. So I guess the next commissioners meeting would be the first Tuesday in June, which would be the 3rd or 2nd?
Second.
Somewhere in there, yeah.
So weather pending, because we know Mother Nature is a friend and a foe of River City Speedway, depending on the night, a practice and potentially 2 races.
Okay, that's a little more, that's a little more than what I wanted before we hear back. But here, I guess my thoughts would be that I will go along with this with the understanding that we hear back next week from Kari how it's going and after each race. And if there are problems, if people aren't complying with masks or staying far enough apart, et cetera, that we'll then have to have an emergency meeting to deal with that. Is that fair?
Commissioner Knopf?
Yes, ma'am.
I just want to clarify a comment that Darren said. Darren, when you talked about splitting, are you talking about splitting those classes so you're racing on Thursday and Friday, so you reduce the amount of people that are at the grounds at a time, or no?
And that's what I mean, this thing is fluid, right? Because as we move through it, there's different opinions and different comments. So that is exactly what, we've talked about and shared, to try and, we have to, if you're gonna put on a race program, you have to have enough cars to put on a race program. Otherwise it, doesn't look like a race program, I guess, so.
Right. Okay. I just wanted to understand what that meant. Thank you.
Any other comments?
Madam Chair,
Yes, ma'am. Yes, sir.
either way, does Commissioner Ross' motion have a limit on people in the stand?
It goes with the proposal, there's smart restart proposal.
Up 900?
Up to 900?
Yeah, whatever it says, yeah.
That's what it says in their proposal.
Yep.
Is there any other discussion? Okay, I just want to make comment because I was also there, and I think that River Cities is done a wonderful job as far as putting their plan together, and I'm totally thoughtful or feel that they are totally committed to making this work. At the time, and I also advised Kari that I would support her in all of this because of what I saw and what I heard from those gentlemen. I did not know at the time that there was going to be a 250 limit. And so I have to give that thought because I like to follow the rules. And so I know it's an interpretation, but it's the rule. It's a guideline that we're going to have to go by for now. And I get, all the comments, the suggestions, it's outdoors, it's a big facility. I guess what I would like to see is rather than go with the 900 and then maybe have to cut back, is that we go with the 250 this time and then get an interpretation from the governor's office, public health, whatever, or at least give us a little more time to think about that. And the reason I say this is because there's going to be other organizations that are also going to be coming to us. And I think that we need to be consistent with what we're doing until we're totally comfortable that we're in a good position. And so I'm supportive of opening, that venue this weekend, but I have a struggle with the 200 or with the 900 people. So that's my comment. Any other thoughts? Okay, we have a motion and a second then to move forward with the reopen plan by River Cities Speedway and recommended by Kari and for this weekend, and identifying all of the security issues, safety issues, that sort of thing, but it would be with the 900 individuals that would be able to be present in the grandstand. So we have a motion and a second. No further discussion. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed?
Nay?
Aye.
Aye, yeah.
So that motion,
This,
go ahead.
I'm sorry, Chairman Knopf. Yeah, and I agree with you on this, and maybe what we could do, I want to see them get open, but I would support a motion for opening here on Friday with 250, and then we see how it goes. We can always, I agree, we can always expand it, and one of the problems is once rules are in place, that people start spending them immediately. So, you know, I'm concerned about starting too large to begin with.
Thank you. To me, it's easier to start small and grow big. You know, I have every bit of confidence that based on what I was hearing from this organization, they're going to follow the rules. But I think at that point when we talked, and I might be wrong on this, but I think everybody was looking at 50% of the population, or the numbers that you would normally or could normally have there is the figure that we were looking at. And so with the numbers that were provided, I didn't have a problem with that until I read the governor's guidelines. And again, they're just guidelines. I understand that, but I think it warrants more follow-up on that. And then, you know, if we find out we have, you know, that this is fine, I don't have a problem going forward with the larger numbers, but. So is that a motion then? Okay.
Did the motion fail as it was with 900, or are we done yet?
That failed. That motion failed.
Yeah, Chairwoman, no, I would have a motion to allow the River City Speedways to open up on Friday night, hopefully, weather permitting, with the 250 number. And I would like to see how it goes. And hopefully we can also get some clarification from Bismarck on this. And I have no problems having a special meeting just for the purpose of dealing with it. If a week from now or 12 days from now or whenever, we decide that we would be able to open it up further. So that would be my motion for 250 on Friday night.
Madam Chair, Commissioner Falk, is that approving this smart restart, changing the 900 to 250, or it's not?
It's to the 250, is that correct?
It's
right.
Are you approving everything in that smart restart except for the 900? You want to reduce it to 250, is that right?
Right, I like the plan. I just don't like the number of people involved right now, especially with the guidelines that we have in starting the very first night with way over the guidelines.
And I think we just
Mr. Ball,
need, go ahead.
Is it a 1 week? Is it a 1 week trial on 250 and then we meet, or what?
Well, what I would do is I'd make the motion right now for, until our next meeting, but I'm certainly happy to have a meeting a week from now or whenever if we find out there have been changes by the governor's office, and also when we hear back from Kari how this event went. Everybody follow?
Yep.
I'm sorry, what, Sheriff Schneider?
You should ask the Speedway how many people they would have minimum in attendance in order to hold the venue. I don't think they'll hold it for 250.
I can't hear Sheriff Snyder.
Question for the racetrack people, Darren or Brad. Can you hold a function with 250 people?
We won't even open the doors.
That's what I figured.
So just Aaron here to interject a little bit. As we look at these guidelines, is there any way, you know, would we be tasked to reach out to the governor to ask or get an opinion of outdoor venue? When we comb through those guidelines for large gatherings, such as these outdoor venues, it often mentions rooms. When you're in an outdoor venue, though, granted, there's a stand that has, when you walk through the grandstand, there's a ceiling. If you're in the beer garden, there's 4 walls of ceiling and the floor. I guess our office has 4 walls of ceiling and a floor. Our pit shack does, our kitchen. But the vast majority of the people are going to be, you know, outside, and there's only a floor. There's no 4 walls and there's no ceiling. So, you know, when I read those guidelines, you know, I would go back to them and I would try to interpret them. And I'm not here to tell you that I know how to interpret everything correctly, but I would concur with Sheriff Andy in that, you know, as he combs through it, there's nothing in there that I can find. And if someone wants, I would stand corrected, that does reference outdoor venues. And so the North Dakota Breeze being in an outdoor venue, those kind of things, I think one of the public health individuals had mentioned, you know, that they felt really good about the fact that, you know, we're trying to open an outdoor venue. And so just, you know, if you have a chance to think about things, that's just sort of the perspective that I came up with when going through those guidelines, I guess. So having said that, that's all I got.
Thank you, Darren. And the only comment I want to make with respect to that, and again, I went through the guidelines fairly quickly, but the guidelines didn't, to my recollection, did not speak to fairs. So I took that to mean that we could have, he would be approving a fair as well with 250 people. And so I really do think that we need to have clarification further on this. I recognize it's outdoors, but I also recognize that I think we was also approving fairs, which is outdoors with a limit of 250. So my interpretation of the policy is that 250 would be the limit. Now, again, I can be wrong. You know, you have 2 people looking at something and you're going to get 2 different interpretations, and I can appreciate that. And you know, and like the other commissioners have said, we want this to work. We want it to be successful. But I think we need further communications with the state on this one before I'm going to be comfortable to be, you know, me or the others, I don't know, I'm just speaking for myself, to be comfortable, because if you make an exception to the rule right off the bat, and then you're going to risk having to pull some of that back, and that's all I guess I want to say.
As Commissioner Ross, could we task Kari with getting that information for us by tomorrow?
If she can get that by tomorrow, if she can get through, you know, I suppose, I don't know why not. I mean, we want to partner with this and try.
I want it to work too, but they can't hold the event with 250.
Yes, I know that. I understand that, but.
So I would like to task her with getting that information tomorrow if possible.
Madam Chair, we have a vote.
Yes, I know. We have a motion on the floor, and so it would be up to Mr. Falk if he wanted to amend his motion to allow.
I think you need a second.
Okay.
I think he needs a second on his motion, or he needs to withdraw his motion.
Okay. So we have a,
Commissioner Knopf,
yes, Kari?
I would be willing to run down that information. There was some new information that came to light in the governor's press conference today, so I need to rewatch that, because our curve is flattening. So let me see if I can get an answer for you by tomorrow.
Madam Chair,
Yes, sir.
this is Dave. I'll second the motion, with the proviso that we hold off and have a special meeting, just a 10-minute meeting or whatever, to make the vote after we hear from Kari. The next day or so.
Okay, so we have a motion from Commissioner Falk that we move forward with the reopening, but we had 250 limit. And so we have a motion and I have to have a second on that. I have to take some action on that one. So we have a motion. I need a second. Do I have a second?
Madam Chair, I seconded it, but
Okay, I'm sorry, I didn't remember
perhaps
that.
we'll have to withdraw the motion until we have a special meeting. It doesn't matter how we do it, I suppose.
Well, I think we have to, a motion and a second, and I think that we have to, if that's not the route we want to go, then it would, if it's the desire of the board for it to fail, and then have another motion that would follow that.
Yeah, Madam Chair, here's my thought, is let's vote on the motion. If by any reason they decide they would like to raise and try it with 250, you know, if you have 5 people per car, that would be 50 cars you could run if they're running it on television. Now, it's a trial, but the other side of the coin is that, so if we vote on this, that's fine. If we can expand the number of people if we so desire, after we hear back from Kari tomorrow or the day after. I'm not saying I'm going to vote for 900. Still, that's a big number, but I'm willing to look at expanding it based on what we hear, if we hear back something.
Okay, and so I'm going to go to Haley. And what is it that you would recommend how we process or move through this motion that we have right now for 250? Because we have a motion and a second, so we have to act on that, correct? And
Madam Chair, members of the commission, yes, I think you could certainly call for a vote on that motion. I think as Commissioner Falk suggests, you could, if that motion passed, you could at a later special meeting have a subsequent vote to expand your previous motion that passed if that was deemed appropriate by the board.
But it could fail, and then a new motion made.
That's correct.
So would that be cleaner, easier?
Take the vote. And then go from there if it passes, then if
It-
nothing.
well, whether-
then
yes.
another.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second then for the 250, for them to move forward with their plan, reopen plan. The motion has a limit of 250 people on that, in that setting. So all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Me, I'm out. Yeah. I
Cindy voted which way?
opposed.
Cindy, did you vote?
Yeah, I'm opposed.
So it fails. So Commissioner Falk or any other commissioners, do you wish to make a new motion?
Just a minute, Chairwoman Knopf, how did you vote on it?
I opposed, so it failed. So there were 3 of us that opposed the 250. And the reason I guess I voted that way is because I was thinking that we would have another motion and probably call for further consideration from the state before we make a decision.
Well, unfortunately, that was a part of my motion, but becoming a nightmare.
I know it's becoming a nightmare, but what was a nightmare for me was the 250 limit. And so that's
Well,
why I
Yeah,
opposed.
but I indicated that I would be willing, that would get us started, and we could amend that motion once we hear back from Kari, but, okay, that's fine.
Madam Chair,
Yes, ma'am.
we do have a meeting scheduled tomorrow from 1 to 3 for talking about the county budget.
Right,
For
and
the year
1 to 5
2021.
1 to 5 on Thursdays. So we have 2 meetings.
Right, 1 to 3:30 tomorrow. We could have an emergency meeting once Kari gets information, possibly either at the beginning or the end of that meeting.
You have another day. That day.
Could we have it before? I have a library board meeting at 4. And I think we're going till 3:30, so.
Yeah, well, maybe we could start at 12:45. I mean, it should be fairly quick if we find out it's gonna be either up or down when we hear from Kari, but
Okay, and I anticipate that she should be able to get an answer. Maybe not, but make every effort to. Unless you want to put it, I know it's putting another day off, but it's going to give her time to connect with the right people if we did it on Thursday.
yeah, I would like to do it on Thursday, but I think that really, puts a real crimp in the plans of the race people if we wait till Thursday.
Yeah, I know. There's no good way here.
Yeah, I think we should try to do it tomorrow at 12:45 if we can.
I would agree.
Okay, so we can schedule, so then this is basically tabled at this point until we can get more information tomorrow, and we'll call for a special meeting at 12:45 if we have an answer. Does that work? Does that work for everyone?
It does.
Darren and Brian, or Brad, are you able to make yourself available? If we do a Zoom?
Sure, we can, I'm in my satellite office in Warren, Minnesota, and I have appointments until probably 2. We're only gonna be able to do practices if we're only allowed the 250, just as an FYI, as that will limit us in scope as to what we can do, so, it would be practice only in my estimation.
It wouldn't even be, the facility would sit empty. I mean, it's just a quick question. As fast as you guys could vote to let us do something, couldn't you as fast tell us to shut it down too? If we don't comply?
Yes, but we don't want to go that route. We want to partner with you and make you successful. You know, and you're putting information,
We appreciate,
Go ahead.
no, we appreciate that, and that, you know, like I said, when we came out, we didn't come out with open up the facility to 2,500 people, and we understand the virus is here, and you know, we got to deal with it. But we feel that we keep it down to around 1,000 people, and we got the plan in place, approved by a bunch of people, and yeah, we put a lot of work into it. In fact, you guys are gonna take our guidelines and run with them to everyone else in Grand Forks now, and now we limit us to 250, and those potential people could open up to whatever. I mean, we're not asking for a whole lot. We're just asking to try and put something on so we can make sense of it to go forward and actually be a leader in the community, that it can be done.
Right, and that's going to take.
That's all I got.
Thank you. Appreciate your comments. Okay, so Kari, anything else for us? And so tomorrow, Darren and Brad, do you, I think we have Darren, I know we have Darren's email address, so we can forward the Zoom link to him, and then could you pass that along to Brad if the two of you want to be part of that conversation tomorrow?
Yes.
And then, but let's plan for 12:45, assuming that we have a response, and then we'll just go forward from there, and hopefully that will work for everyone. So,
Madam
anything?
Chair,
Yes, sir.
and Debbie Nelson, how soon do you have to get a special meeting notice out for 12:45? Would that be today, or would it be first thing in the morning, or what?
It'll be the first thing in the morning.
That's sufficient time, isn't it?
I have to notice it as soon as I know about it, but I'm not gonna do it tonight. I will do it in the morning.
Okay. Just want to make sure we got it noticed
Yeah,
in time so we
if
can go.
we don't have an answer, then it gets canceled, so, and she'll put out
Right.
notice of that as well, but, thinking positively, we're gonna move forward and hopefully have our meeting at 12:45 tomorrow. Okay, any other comments on any of this? Okay. Hearing none, next item then is highway engineer. Nick? Oh, no. Human service.
And I don't know if Kari had additional updates to give.
Oh, I don't know. Did you have more, Kari?
No, I'm good, Commissioner, no, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so we have, human services zone director. Are you on the line? Scott?
Hi, Madam Chair. Yes, I am.
Thank you. Welcome.
Madam Chair, members of the commission, I submitted to you our zone plan that needs to be submitted to the state by June 1st. Initially, they thought that this was going to be put on hold because of the COVID-19 and that the state didn't have an opportunity to come out and meet with us and help us develop our plan. So I went ahead and put a proposal together based on their outline and direction. So I hope you all had an opportunity to go through it and read it. The sections that we needed to discuss were the organization and operation for the Grand Forks County Human Service Zone. And what that entails for a standalone zone is that things aren't going to change much for us in terms of our operation. We are still going to provide the same services as we always have done in the past. We included our acknowledgement that we will follow the direction from the state, and we'll be working with them for any amendments they might have to this plan. So with that, I'll just open it up to questions.
Okay, does anyone have questions for Mr. Hooper? I had one question. You know, when it comes to the $2,300 burial, GA burial, do you think that'll be increased?
Not sure where that's going to go, Madam Chair. They are working on a statewide burial policy, and so I haven't been part of those discussions and just kind of waiting myself to see how that's going to roll out. It's my understanding that they're going to have conversations with funeral directors and what that might look like, because across the state right now, there's different zones reimbursing different amounts. So they're going to get that statewide uniform. So more to come on that.
Okay, so that potentially could, so because that's GA money, is that county money?
No, that's part of the state funding. They took
Okay,
that
all right.
this year.
All right, thank you. That was my only question. And then I had another question about holidays. You know, because state and county have different holidays, celebrate different holidays, have the, you know, different holidays off. And so my understanding then is, in Grand Forks County, is more lenient than the state. And so your employees then will be working on those days, and so we'll have to have maintenance and whatnot here. Is that correct?
It's my understanding, Madam Chair, that right now it's designed to follow the zone host county's policy in that regards. So we're a standalone zone. We would adhere to the holidays here in Grand Forks County.
All right. I just know what, I was a state employee, that we get different holidays in counties, so. And then on the question with NEDRF and stuff, and I'm sorry to ask you these dumb questions, but with the vehicles, the county vehicles, are those all under the state now? Or are they still county vehicles?
Madam Chair, that's the part of the plan that I put together when we take a look at our fixed assets.
Yeah.
Those are still questions we have out there for the state, and hopefully that we'll be given some guidance on those, but it's my understanding that the vehicles at this point would be an indirect cost, and those vehicles would be with the county versus the zone.
Okay, because I saw it under the NEDRF, the attachment A, so. Anyone else have questions? Okay, so what are you looking for? This is informational only, is that correct?
Madam Chair, this is our proposal in draft format to the state for their review and consideration. Given the fact that we didn't have an opportunity to meet with them because of COVID-19, the state had sent out an email to zone directors stating that we will have still 6 months to work with the state to get our plans finalized so that they can go into full force and effect on the first year of 2021.
Okay, so we need a motion today then for chair signature. Is that correct?
It's my understanding we can just have a signature, send it in as a draft so that we can continue to work on the plan along with the state to make sure that we're in full compliance.
Thank you, sir. Any
Madam Chair,
Yes, ma'am.
I would make that motion for the chair signature on this draft plan.
Thank you. We have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second for chair signature on the draft zone plan proposal. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, Scott. Appreciate it for all your hard work. It was a
Thank
lot
you.
of work, a lot of reading.
Thank you.
Yes, you're most welcome. Okay, so the next then is highway engineer, Nick.
All right, can you hear me okay?
Yes, loud and clear.
Good. Well, good afternoon. I have one item for consideration for the board today, and that would be the sale or transfer of some property. We have some miscellaneous small items in an old truck for consideration. And I did attach a list here. We have an old oil distributor tank, and the trailer go with it, an old disc. And actually we have an old fuel tank, and if you do recall, April 17th, 2018, this was that tank that I came to the board because Mr. Gordon Thompson had this old fuel tank, that one right by where your cursor is right there. We took it in thinking we're gonna have money someday to fix it up, and I don't know. My opinion, I guess, is just taking up space in the yard, and I'd like to get rid of it. We have a couple of old trailers that are dilapidated and leaking, and we store some miscellaneous stuff in there. And we did buy a new storage unit from the conservation district for $1,000 that would replace these, and it's just much better shape. Because these ones are pretty bad. Then we got a couple of water tanks we don't use anymore. Those are, I don't know, maybe 500 gallon, 1,000 gallon tanks. And then we have that big black raised oil tank. that we used to store our crack seal in, but we haven't used any of this stuff in, many years, probably a couple of decades for sure. And I'd like to liquidate them. And number one, I would ask for commission's permission to get rid of them, and then if whether that's by specific motion or just as an option to the board to consider under Century Code, and Haley chime in here if I misspeak here, but items under $1,000 can either be sold at public auction or by resolution of the board. So at a private sale, so it'd be at my, it's okay at a private sale, it'd be just at my, or whoever the board designates discretion as to what would be a fair price to set that, what's reasonable to the county. And one option I guess I would ask is on these small items less than $1,000 that the board maybe consider a perpetual resolution that as these items of low value come up, that the departments can, or at least maybe the highway department could get rid of them as desired. The other item I have is a 1959 Snow-Go. We call it truck number 28. It's actually a pretty cool piece of equipment. It does work, but it needs some minor work done. The brakes need to be reconstructed and whatnot, but that's up in our Inkster shed. Haven't used it since 1997, and I just don't know if we'd ever use it again. It's just not a very practical piece of equipment, especially when we have our Ford tractors with blowers on them that are much more practical and do a better job. So, but that one definitely is worth more than $1,000, so that would have to go to a public auction. So yeah, that's my request for the board to consider. And any questions?
Any questions of Nick? So we have, in the information he provided us, two different motions that we need to make. Anyone care to make a motion?
Madam Chair, I'll give it a shot. I move that Mr. West be allowed to sell any excess property at the highway department that's listed for under $1,000, that he simply, or that he believes it's worth under $1,000, that he simply be able to sell it, and to do that on a continuing basis. Otherwise, we're just accumulating junk. And with respect to the truck, I would move that we proceed to sell that to auction.
Okay.
Is that handling for you, Nick?
Yes, that's great. Yes.
Okay, do we have a second?
I'll second that motion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second.
Seconding your motion?
Sorry?
Did you make two motions, Sam?
He made one motion, one motion
Yeah,
that
well,
covered both.
Two items in one motion.
Sounded like two motions to me. Okay.
Well, I think it covers it all, but it can be in one motion, so.
One motion, right. So we have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carried. Thanks, Nick.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Appreciate that.
Yep. Okay, next item is Finance and Tax Director.
Madam Chair, members of the commission, I just wanted to give you an update on the June 9th vote by mail of primary election. We've had a total of 13,415 applications or ballot requests. A total of 10,205 ballots have been mailed. The second and last batch that I will be sending to C-Change, I sent this afternoon, that was another 3,210. They said they would mail those on Thursday. All ballots from this point forward will be mailed daily from my office. We will no longer be using C-Change, so that's an additional step in the process that we'll be doing in my office. We had 196 ballots returned today for a total of 340 ballots returned to date. The highest turnout we've ever had at a primary was in June 2012, and that was 16,164. think we might surpass that. And the lowest turnout is 4,477, and that was in June 2014. I usually have about 12 additional people working in my office or helping with the election throughout the day, each day. I'm so thankful for all the departments that have allowed their staff to assist. County departments, Grand Forks City and Grand Forks Park. We would not be able to keep up without them. So just want to thank all of them. That's all I wanted to say.
Okay, did anyone have any questions for Ms. Nelson? Okay, thank you for your comments and the update. Appreciate it. Next item is Director of Administration. What do you have for us today?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have 4 different items for the board today. And I'll move along as quickly as possible, but we'll have to answer any questions. The first item is an amendment to our project engineer or project management contract with AE2S regarding the parking ramp, which is under repairs. You should have been sent the original contract for professional services and then the amendment. AE2S is requesting a contract amendment. Basically, this amendment would affect our original contract for professional services with AE2S as the project manager on the construction of the parking ramp. We did bid, as you recall, we did bid that project last May. We only received 1 bidder. Therefore, the board, rightfully so, rejected that lone bid and decided to wait until January to rebid. When we did, as a county, resume the project, AE2S spent considerable time staying engaged between that window or within that window with me, with Mr. Gashevsky from facilities. They had to do some work on changing the scope, continuing the work when we made the decision to rebid in January. As a result of all of this, we have spent the entire budget of the original contract, including construction services, shop drawings, review sites, other visits, pre-construction visits. So AE2S has requested we amend the construction services contract budget from the original $4,500 to $12,000 and continue on an hourly time and material basis. So I'm asking for the board's approval of that contract amendment. I'm asking for the chair's signature on that amendment, and then the funds would come from capital expense.
Okay, any questions?
Madam Chair, I'm looking at page 112, that's of the scanned documents. And it talks about change item 6 from 4,500 to 14,500. Is that what you're referring to, Tom?
Oh, I must have, there must be an error on my part, Ms. Nelson. Thanks for catching that. Yes, 14,500. Thank you.
And then the next part, the reimbursable expenses to be 26,500. So is that an additional amount, the 26,500, or was that part of it before? So now we're just going from 45.
Something isn't right there. Oh no, that's the total. No, that's the total. That's part of it. So just asking to amend from 4,500 to 14,500.
Okay.
Any questions of Mr. Ford? Hearing none, does someone care to make a motion?
Madam Chair,
Yes, ma'am.
I would move with this contract that the construction observation services change from 4,500 to 14,500, and that we approve the amendment with the chair's signature.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
I'll second that. Tom here.
Any Further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carried.
Okay, thank you. And I have been advised by Mr. Johnson, the project manager, that ICS has run across some unforeseen issues. So I've been advised that there are some more change orders to be expected. I don't have those yet. I hope to have those by the next commission meeting. So I don't know what those will look like. I don't have any estimate as to what the cost would be. Just want to let the board know that in any construction project, they're finding some further problems. The second item I have, Madam Chair, is I want to provide an update on the county recovery team. We've had a couple of meetings now, plus ongoing conversations through email and telephone calls. ICON has met with the identified departments, and we are awaiting ICON's proposal. Once we have that proposal, it will be reviewed by the recovery committee. It will also be shared with those department managers who did want to participate, so that we can make sure that those managers' concerns are accurately captured. Once we've gone through that process, the recovery committee or the recovery team will bring those recommendations before the board and seek an approval. We agreed, we met this morning, we all agreed unanimously that we really can't begin discussing phased opening options or any kind of dates until ICON has completed their work, so that we can see what they're recommending and we can bring our recommendations forward. We did, however, discuss some of the criteria for what a phased reopening may look like for the county. There were 7 items we specifically identified, and of course, if Ms. Steele or Ms. Longstad have anything to add, I'll please encourage them to do so. But we agreed that the safety planning within the departments would begin, and I know they already have begun, but those department heads would begin thinking about how to keep their employees safe as they come back to work. Department heads will identify staff to return to the office. Department heads would identify staff to remain teleworking if able. We would need to establish some kind of number, a specific number of days without a positive COVID-19 test in Grand Forks County before we would be comfortable recommending when a phased opening would commence. We would also want to discuss at what point does the county pivot. And what I mean by that is if we see that drop in COVID-19 cases and we do begin to reopen and that second wave eventually hits as they're predicting, what's that magic number of new cases before the county pivots and goes back into a closure and sends employees back to telework. PPE requirements, we'll need to discuss that further as well. And then the final criteria of what screening measures would be in place if we were, when we are to reopen. Of course, we aren't anywhere near shoring those things up, but when we do, I can assure you that this will all be brought before the board for your review and approval once complete. And the recovery team will continue to engage all the department heads for their input. Any questions, Madam Chair, before I move on to the court?
Any questions for Mr. Ford? So do we have any kind of a projected date? Is that the September one or November or something? Nothing?
You know, ma'am, we as a team have backed off that. There was a word talking about possibly September, but we agreed today that it's difficult to do so until we see what ICON has planned for how to reconfigure offices to keep our employees safe. Plus, it's just such a moving target right now of when the micro outbreaks could start, when the second wave could start. So we're more comfortable saying that we think we should proceed as we currently are until we have more information. And I certainly defer to Ms. Longstad or Ms. Steele. I know that they're on right now if I missed anything.
No, I don't have any questions. I was just curious. Anyone else have questions? Okay, thank you for that.
No? Okay, ma'am. Moving on to the court. So, Ms. Longstad, Commissioner Falk, Commissioner Ingen, Ms. Gell, along with myself, we met with presiding Judge Hager, Court Administrator Scott Johnson, and Clerk of Court Rebecca Absey on Monday. They are discussing their own reopening plan, and it would be done in phases as well. A brief recap, all judges will have returned to the courthouse for a 5-week rotation beginning first week of June. The Clerk of Court's office has already returned a very small number of Clerk of Court staff to the courthouse for daily work. Presiding Judge Hager has directed the court administrative staff to continue to focus on the use of electronic means, so Zoom, GoTo meetings, conference calls, etc. So do virtual presence, virtual meetings as much as possible. The courts are planning to resume jury trials in July. Criminal trials will be the priority, and some civil trials may begin in October. Judge Hager has assured me and the team that they have undertaken a deliberative planning process to address space, distance, timing requirements associated with bringing juries to the courthouse. However, the county commission did decree that the courthouse is closed to the public until further notice. So we did communicate that to Judge Hager and Mr. Johnson. So if and when those jury trials do commence in July, we will need to revisit, the courts will need to revisit this with the commission on lifting that closure to the public. Commissioner Falk, Commissioner Ingen, Ms. Longstad, did I miss anything?
This is Commissioner Falk. No, I think you covered it pretty well. It's a plan that's, I guess, just beginning at this point, and I think it'll be expanded upon. There's still discussions on various things, including who's going to do the screening, which I think initially Judge Hager thought public health or the sheriff's department would help with that, and Commissioner Ingen and I both indicated that that wasn't very likely. Both of those departments are overtaxed, and it really isn't their responsibility. I think this might be more the court's responsibility as far as screening the jurors as they come in, as far as health questionnaires, etc. But that's all going to be discussed in the future.
Thank you. Anything else?
Ms. Longstad, any thoughts on how this would affect your staff?
Thank you, Mr. Ford. I was just going to chime in on that front. Obviously, what happens with the court calendar really affects the business that comes through our office. And so with the court's plan on kind of ramping up the court calendar starting June 1st, that will necessitate our office to have some personnel in the building just because of the different tasks that need to be done to prepare for court hearings, even though all court hearings will still be held remotely. We're kind of working to establish a plan within our office to have the absolute minimum number of people physically present as possible while still getting the necessary work done. And we should have kind of a plan put together later on this week that I can certainly communicate to the board once it's finalized. But we're hopeful that we should be able to handle most of our work on a remote basis like we've been doing now, and maybe just 3 or 4 people in the office at any given time to process the items on the court calendar.
Madam Chair, members of the commission, I received another letter from Judge Hager this morning, a lengthy letter, just reiterating his commitment to keeping the judges safe, his staff safe, sheriff deputies, his Longstad staff safe, and encouraging to do as much as they can virtually as possible. Right now, no action to be taken on the board. This is just a recap of the meeting. And I'm visiting with Scott Johnson in the background about when they plan on officially making that request. So more to come.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Number 3 of 4, wearing of masks in the courthouse and the county office building. Currently, Northeast Human Services is still seeing clients in the building. All Northeast clients are required to wear masks in the building. All Northeast staff are required to wear masks when interacting with other staff or clients. In my discussions with Ms. Absey, Mr. Johnson, and the judge at the courthouse will be following suit. The recovery team is going to ask the board implement a policy, this policy until further notice. I'm going to expand on that a little bit. We talked about this in the department head meeting last week as well. It was a very good discussion. We would be encouraging all staff to see clients by appointment only. And this is assuming the building, once the building does reopen. So encourage all staff to see clients by appointment only. This will help with pre-screening and communicating our expectations to the clients, to the public. Doing this in advance may identify some health issues which could or would prohibit the wearing of a mask by the public. It's going to be on the management and the staff of the county to enforce this mask policy, as the sheriff does not have the manpower to be the only line of enforcement. Just a note, the county will have to provide masks if we do implement such a policy. And I think Ms. Gales had to drop off, but she has ordered a significant number of masks. And that's about all I can say to that, because I don't want to speak to her, so I don't know what she has planned for those masks. This policy would direct all staff to wear masks when interacting with one another if unable to adhere to the recommended 6-foot physical distancing guidelines and when interacting with the public. So my motion is basically this, Madam Chair, or my request. Masks to be worn in the county office building and courthouse by staff when engaging with staff and are unable to remain 6 feet apart when staff are engaging with the public, and members of the public to wear masks when entering the building unless health conditions prohibit. I can answer any questions or clarify anything.
We need an effective date.
I think we agreed that it would be effective immediately.
Okay. So you've heard the motion request. Anybody want to second the motion? Oh,
No,
he's making a request. So does anyone want to make a motion?
Madam Chair,
Yes, ma'am.
I will make that motion.
Okay. And do we have a second?
second,
I'll second it, Steve.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second to the request. Is there any discussion, further discussion? So I only have one question, I might have missed it. So the county will furnish masks for staff and the public?
Yes, ma'am. It's my understanding from Ms. Gales that if that's what we require, we have to provide masks.
And
But I would,
if we're doing it immediately, where are the masks? Are they gonna be here tomorrow? Tomorrow already?
I would assume that we would have to say something as soon as they're available, because it's usually a 2 to 3 week turnaround time to get them.
Apparently we have them. Ms. Theo said that Kari has them. So it could be effective immediately. So did we get a second on that? Okay, and so,
Yes.
okay. And we had our discussion, so all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. So effective immediately, we will be wearing masks in the building.
And thank you for that. And just one quick thing to add. Kari said this very well the other day. We are literally writing this playbook, Madam Chair. And we understand we're going to run into some special circumstances or some questions are going to come up, and we'll have to do the best we can to discern those and navigate through them. But for the most part, we think this is going to be keeping our employees and the public safe. So thank you for that.
Yep. Well, we have to set an example, I guess, for what we're asking other people to do, so.
And we figured it's already being done in the building by Northeast, so we might as well get folks used to it for when we do start reopening.
Yep, sounds good.
So, Madam Chair, Members of the Commission, I have one more item for you. It's pertaining to the fairgrounds, or excuse me, the historical grandstands on the fairgrounds. And I just want you all to be aware, I did send a letter to Harry and Mark Land, letting them know that I'd be addressing this today. I just don't know if they're on or not, but I just want you to know that I made them aware of it. I had a couple of conversations with Chair Knopf about a week ago about the grandstands, and after our discussions, I reached out to Jake Levin regarding the status of both grandstands on the fairgrounds, more specifically the emergency repairs. Based on my discussion with Mr. Clevin, I asked him to do a quick inspection on the grandstands. You may recall that emergency repairs were authorized and funded by the county board in 2018 and 2019. Those repairs allowed for a maximum deferment period of 5 years with annual inspections. It was the board decided to go this route to provide time for the fair board to identify a means of fundraising to pay for the long-term repairs to those grandstands. Throughout my conversation with Mr. Clevin, he did remind me that the next round of repairs on the grandstands should begin in 2021. This was before he did the inspection. Mr. Clevin did do the inspection. He did report back to me, and unfortunately there are localized deficiencies which have become progressively worse, and to his recommendation need immediate attention. In fact, Mr. Clevin recommended to me that they be repaired this fall. These are worsening of the emergency repairs that were done in 18 and 19. So they aren't new, they're worsening of existing repairs. All in all, the site visit and Mr. Clevin's report and recommendations will cost $2,100. And after visiting with Chair Knopf, I'm asking the board that the county pay for that bill. I initiated the conversation and I requested the inspection of Mr. Clevin. What I'll do then is once I receive that report from Mr. Clevin, I'll turn it on, I'll send it to the fair board so that they can begin planning accordingly. And I do recall from our meetings a few years ago, that the board did communicate to the fair board. So excuse me, the county board communicated to the fair board that they would be responsible for those long-term repairs. So asking for permission from the board to use $2,100 from capital improvements to pay Mr. Clevin to continue that inspection and the report so we can give it to the fair board. Happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Mr. Ford?
Well, Madam Chair, this is Tom. First of all, before I forget, I'll make a motion to pay Mr. Clevin's bill. And then with the comment that I think that we all have seen that this would be coming. And it's particularly frustrating because commissioners, well, probably all of us at various times sat in on meetings with the Fair Board and the Racing Association relative to coming up with a long-term plan to make funding available to take care of those ongoing repairs. And I think we were all frustrated in that we really couldn't get a positive response from either group. I mean, we suggested everything from a surcharge on tickets and racing to any number of things, hiring a consultant or a fundraiser, etc. And I don't think any of that's been done. So those people really need to start looking at that particularly now with COVID-19, I'm not certain that the county's gonna have funds to go into a big repair project out there, so. But I will make the motion, to pay Mr. Clevens.
Okay. You've heard, we have a motion, and we have a second. Do we have a second?
I'll second that motion, Mrs. Debbie.
Okay, we have a
I
motion and a
appreciate
second.
that.
Motion and a second to pay the $2,100 to Mr. Clevin, for his, inspection and report, final report that will be submitted to the county fair board. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed?
Madam Chair?
Yes, sir.
Oh, excuse me, go ahead.
Okay,
No,
opposed, motion
Take out
carried.
the motion.
Motion carried. Okay,
Thank you. Madam Chair, and I'm assuming we will get a copy of Mr. Clevens' report also, because I think we really need to see that also. If there are deficiencies that are safety factors out there, we may have to make a decision on that building.
Commissioner Falk, I'll be happy to share that with the board, with Mr. West, Ms. Longstaff, and whomever else we think needs to view it.
well, and my concern is, and I've talked to Mr. Ford about it and a little bit with Ms. Wamstead, the suggestion that is it time to put something in writing to the fair board with respect to the to my knowledge, there's been no, no fundraising, no efforts or attempts to discuss how these repairs are going to be made and when. We have a timeline, but I don't know that there's been any discussion on that, and I think it was probably darn near a year ago. I'd have to look at my notes, when we last talked about it and left it to the fair boards. You know, it was put in their lap that this was now their responsibility to move forward, and nothing's ever, to my knowledge, been done. And so my concern is that should we put something in writing, you know, as to where we're at, what are the plans and the consequences, I guess, if nothing else, to protect the county and to protect them, of course, but, you know, otherwise, you know, our time limit's going to be up and nothing's started yet and nothing's been repaired, and we're going to keep having situations like this, or we'll end up with a building or a grandstand that is probably should not be in use.
I agree, Commissioner Knopf. I think we have to remind them of everything that's been done in the past, including the fact that the county agreed to make the first repairs out there, which were fairly significant. We wrote the check for that. I think the fair board helped out some on that.
$15,000 they contributed.
Yeah, I think they need to be reminded that, you know, that there's going to be a time where a check's going to have to be written here, or that building's going to become obsolete.
Well, and I think that, you know, that we should have maybe some more concrete deadlines, you know, otherwise my fear is that this will continue on, you know, and I think that, you know, they also need to know what the consequences might be.
Yeah, I think the deadline is the building itself. If they don't start making an effort, the building will be closed. I mean, that's all we're going to be able to do.
Okay, but then I think that's something that needs to go, and you're not disagreeing with me, I know that, you know, but I think that that's something that's important to put down in writing so that they know, you know, and then we have a document that has shared that, because so far it's been verbal, you know, and with thinking that everybody knows or understands, but I don't know, to me it seems like you need to put something like that in writing so that, you know, it's official and no one can come back and say, well, we didn't know or we didn't understand it that way.
I agree totally.
So how do we go about doing that?
Well,
Dave, go ahead, Tom.
but I was gonna say, I think maybe Mr. Ford, I think has got a lot of free time on his hands. Maybe he could draft up a short letter with the assistance of Commissioner Knopf, who's got, you've got the historical knowledge on what's been done. But draft up a short letter and then bring it before the board at our next meeting or the meeting thereafter. Especially after we find out a little bit more from Mr. Clevin what's going on. And that we send that out under the chair's signature.
Yeah, because we'll have from Mr. Clevin's report now, and then, and I think that Mr. Ford, what was the total of the bill 2 years ago? Was it like almost $1 million for the repairs that were needed?
Yeah, Madam Chair, it was just under $1 million.
But that was at 2 years ago, the prices 2 years ago.
Yep.
So
Yes,
that,
that's correct, ma'am. Mm-hmm.
so that's increased. And so I think in all fairness to them, to the Fair Board, I mean, we need to be upfront with them and work together and recognize that maybe, there are limits and maybe we can't move forward. And so make some decisions. We all need to be on the same page. So we can.
And I think we could include in the letter what the various parties put in the last project, that I think was close to $100,000, if memory serves me correct.
I don't think it was that. I think it was like probably closer to 70,000. So I guess that's close to 100,000.
Yeah.
So, all right. So Mr. Ford and I will then get together and put together a letter with the help of Ms. Wanstead, our legal advisor, and, so we get our verbiage correct and what have you, and we'll present that then at a future commission meeting. Is that okay? Okay.
Yeah, happy to. I was always afraid Mr. Balk was gonna find out I didn't have enough to do. Looks like it caught up with me.
We talk about it all the time, Tom, so we all know it.
We all know it. So, okay. So anything else for us, Mr. Ford?
No, ma'am, that is all I have.
Okay. So, State's Attorney, Ms. Wanstead.
Madam Chair, members of the commission, I just have one item for the commission's review. At the last meeting, we discussed a Department of Justice grant that's available to the county in the amount of about $58,000. At the last meeting, this board motioned to move forward with looking into that grant option. Since the last board meeting, we discussed this at the department head meeting. We also had meetings with Sheriff Schneider and Brett Burkholder because their departments are likely to have the most expenses that may stem from COVID-19. Kind of a plan was put in place to move forward. Thankfully, Sheriff Schneider's staff and himself are kind of taking the lead on applying for this grant for the reasons that they have prior experience with applying for Department of Justice grants. And so he and Mr. Burkholder have been working together to set some priorities that they would like to apply for coverage for. So I think he is prepared to update the board on what priorities they intend to move forward with.
Thank you. Sheriff Schneider.
Madam Chair, Knopf, members of the commission, and Haley, thank you for that briefing. We have met several times. Also included was Tom Ford in the meetings as well to help kind of coordinate things. I guess to be fair, I was notified of this grant in late March. at the sheriff's office, unbeknownst to me, that other entities in the county would have intentions on applying for them. So Michelle Olson, my administrative assistant, began the grant application. After the last commission meeting, we were enlightened that the jail, Brett Burkholder was interested in applying for some of the grants. We spoke several times between then and now. And the grant amount is $58,008 that is eligible. The name of the grant is the Coronavirus Emergency Supplemental Funding Program solicitation. And after discussing several options, we all came to the agreement that this grant would likely be best suited for the jail, the sheriff's office, and juvenile detention to have the funds made available to them. The only downside of that is instead of entering 32 potential persons eligible for the reimbursement through the sheriff's office. Now my administrative assistant's looking at entering over 100 people's salaries and overtime benefits, etc., into the grant. But that will be in the best interest of the county, I believe, if there was a outbreak or something at the jail where they needed overtime to cover their staff. Mr. Burkholder enlightened us that his solicitation of outside security to cover shifts or help with shifts if they had an outbreak, they received 0 persons interested in the contract. Therefore, it will fall directly back upon his staff to fill those shifts. This would maybe make a dent in it for a couple days, a week, $58,000, because that would be substantial overtime. What we'd be looking to solicit on this grant would be overtime or straight time funding for staff that was caused by COVID-19 overtime, any escalated transportation costs or procedures that we would need due to the COVID-19. I guess referencing that, if our sheriff's office is tasked with transporting 2, 3, 4 different trips in a day versus the 1 to 2 normal ones that we would have, we'd be looking at reimbursement for mileage and potential overtime costs to cover the deputies called back for that. We're also considering applying for any unreimbursed personal protective equipment that we would be obtaining due to the COVID, and any other equipment that may be needed. We would work on that wording, and I guess what I'm looking for today from the commission would be approval to go ahead and apply with the grant with the conditions that were set forth. A large amount of the grant, large percentage, is going to be earmarked specifically for overtime funding or straight time for employees in lieu of running through anything that wouldn't be reimbursed through the other grants that are available federally. Another note on that is when applying for the grant, as we've done in the past with several federal grants, we request approval through the commission to apply for it, and then the sheriff's office, me in particular, will sign off on the grant. So I'd be requesting approval to sign off on applying for this grant with the blessing of the commission, with the annotation that it will be applied to juvenile detention, the sheriff's office, and the correctional center.
Okay, you've heard the request. Does anybody want to make a motion?
I would make a motion to approve at the request of Sheriff Snyder.
Okay, and so do we have a second?
I'll second that motion.
Thank you. So we have a motion and a second to have Sheriff Snyder move forward with making an application for a Department of Justice grant, which will cover juvenile detention, the sheriff's office, and corrections. And also giving him the authority to sign off on that application. Is that correct? Okay. So all in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carried.
Thank you, Commission. One other note that was discussed with Mr. Ford, I believe, was on at least one of the calls, Mr. Burkholder and Ms. Wamstead, is when it came down to time to decide who was going to be the applying agency or entity for this grant, there were plenty of acknowledgments to let my administrative assistant do it, which is fine. She's very skilled at it and she's very versed, and she will definitely get it done in the time frame. But it's a substantial task for her to take on to support several other agencies within the county. So she will be responsible for applying all of the paperwork, all the overtime documentation through payroll, reimbursement through the Department of Justice. That is all going to fall on her shoulders. Over the this grant expires December of 2021. The funds are available that long. So she's responsible for all of the federal mandated reporting, all of these salaries, expenditures, etc. Where I'm going with this is, like I said, we're willing to do it, but I think that there's a shining star that can come out of here, that it is highly likely that this is going to happen several times into the future, that there's going to be grants available to a county entity that can be applicable to more than one agency or one department within the county. And I would like, and not right now, I'm late for dinner, but I would like the county commission to potentially consider a person or persons that could maybe pursue grant opportunities or grant applications in the future when something like this arises. As Haley and I and Brett are all well aware, and Tom and several of you, grants are an exceptional opportunity for government entities. And a lot of times it comes down to somebody that's capable and willing to apply for them. I wouldn't necessarily put that extra task, depending on what it is or how big it goes, on anybody that has a large responsibility right now, but it should definitely be something that's considered. I would find it highly unlikely that this is the last COVID-19 related grant that's going to be eligible to counties in the United States. And I'm open to any comments or questions. I'm sure Haley would be more than happy to interject any of her thoughts on that comment, but we did discuss it and they all agreed, but at the same time, none of them volunteered to apply for the grant.
Are there people out there that do that professionally, apply for grants? I've heard that before, and so. I mean,
there actually is, and there's actually schools and training. There's a lot that goes into it.
Yeah, and so, I mean, rather than hire somebody that this is their job, I mean, it isn't like we do them real often, but that might be something worth looking into, is seeing if there is somebody out there that would be willing to do that and what those costs might be. I mean, just as a thought. So.
Madam Chair, this is Tom Ford again.
Yes, sir.
Just to kind of put a little more perspective on where the sheriff was coming from in that initial meeting. The sheriff was pretty gracious. It was actually me that kind of recommended Ms. Olson, just because she'd already gotten a start on it. And where that wound up going was, and the sheriff's points are very valid, by the way. I do agree with him. Where that wound up going, that discussion was our current budget situation, and knowing where our budget's probably going to wind up going in the next few years because of COVID, and knowing COVID isn't going away anytime soon. There are a lot of grants out there. I receive emails daily on different types of grants that can be applied for. I'm not a grant writer. Ms. Longstaff's not a grant writer. The sheriff's staff, they aren't grant writers, neither is Mr. Burkholder. And that is, I think grants are going to become a way for government entities to supplement some lost revenue in the future. And so that's kind of the rabbit hole we're going down. And I know that, and I'm not volunteering anybody or recommending you start a position search. But I know, for example, the city of Grand Forks, they have a grants officer in their finance and tax department, and her sole job is to seek out grants, apply for grants, monitor, report, etc. And I know that a good grant writer can very easily bring in twice what their salary is for a grant. So that's just putting a little bit more context around that discussion, that decision. So I don't think anyone was saying let's go out and hire a grant writer today, but I think it's something that it does merit a little consideration in the future.
Well, and I can't speak for the rest of the commission, but I mean, it makes sense. But I was just trying to think of ways that maybe we could research some of that. And maybe, like you said, the city has a staff member, maybe they have extra time that they devote to this too, you know, and be compensated. But, you know, we'll talk about that, I guess, at some point down the road but we want to utilize those grants anytime we can. We're going to need to. So, but thank you both. Okay, anything else?
I have nothing further. I'd just like to thank Ms. Wamstead and apologize for taking a bunch of her time. Thank you.
Did she go away or is she still with us?
She's probably late for supper.
I'm here.
Okay.
I have nothing for either, and I think the thanks goes to Sheriff Schneider and Michelle Olson for really taking the lead on this, so.
Okay, thank you very much. Anything else for us? Ms. Wamstead?
No, thank you.
All right. Committee reports, Sheriff Ross, oops. Commissioner, you will always be Sheriff Ross. Commissioner Ross?
Just last week at a Northeast Human Service Advisory Board meeting, and they were supposed to actually send out the minutes from that meeting, which they have not done yet, but it went an hour and a half. So as soon as I get those, I'll send them out to everybody. I got an MPO meeting tomorrow, so that could raise a little problems with our meetings, but other than that, that's all I've got.
Okay, thank you, sir. And you also have been helping down here with vote
Yes,
by mail.
yeah,
So
vote by
thank you
mail,
for
yeah.
that.
Yeah, ripping envelopes.
You're real good with that.
I'm the zipper, yeah, I am.
He's a zipper.
And so have you.
Yeah, I know. So. All right, and so then, Ms. Peach?
Red River Regional Council has an executive committee meeting on, actually tomorrow, no, Thursday afternoon. That may be a conflict with our finance and tax meeting. The airport authority meets on Thursday of this week in the morning. Other than that, I think that's about all I have.
So do we get first priority on Thursday afternoon for the budget?
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
Okay. Commissioner Falk?
Yeah, I attended a very concerning BRIC meeting and concerning about the long-term future of our base because of the reduction of the Global Hawk and how easy it would be to simply move the remainder of the Global Hawk somewhere else. So just for your thoughts, I think we're going to have to try to find some money to maintain our consultants, which we haven't had to pay for, but it's primarily done through the state. But I think we're in a very tenuous position right now, and I'll discuss that more with you later. And I don't want to drag this out anymore either, but Commissioner Knopf, do we have to, or should we be addressing all the emails that we've gotten relative to the election?
Well, I guess that was one of the things that I was going to bring up. I mean, because
Great.
we all are.
Great. I'll defer to you.
Yeah, thanks. We all are getting, you know, phone calls and emails and things like that. And I'm one that if somebody reaches out to me and contacts me, I want to make a phone call back or a contact with them. I mean, that's important to want to encourage people, whether, you know, it's whatever it is. And so I had sent out the, I guess, an email to all of you with the suggested response to that I had put together for one of the individuals. But so where do we, you know, that's always hard for me when we all get the email. It's like, okay, well, who's to respond? And so, you know, and who does respond or doesn't respond or whatever. And so again, as chair, I feel like that responsibility probably would be on me too, but I don't know. I'm not sure. We've never talked about this. And so I think people deserve a response, but who responds? And I don't want to necessarily respond without, because if I respond, then it's like I'm speaking for the board, and you need to have some say in what I'm responding or saying in my responses. So it's difficult for me, but I think it's important. So.
Commissioner Knopf, I'm not sure about the other board members, and I'll let them voice their opinions, but I like the letter. I think it explains the positions very well. And, during the past week, I've made calls, talked to people, not so much people that are complaining about it, but and trying to determine which position we need to go. And clearly, in talking with Debbie Nelson, to try and change the election at this point would be just simply problematic, based on the new machinery, the ballot company that we're using, the timeliness of it. And the other thing is to try and get people, according to Debbie now, she's got 32 out of a possible 48 positions filled for the election. And those people have come from the district chairman that she's asked them to provide people. And of course, they haven't been able to get her all of the people that she needs. And I think that's not surprising. I sympathize with those people because our election people tend to be a lot of retired people, and they're concerned about their health and well-being. And Debbie indicates that if we tried to go to a polling place, she'd need another 60 people. Well, it's just not realistic that we would get 60 good people. I mean, you might get 60 people to show up, but they wouldn't run a good election. And I, over the years, as an attorney in the state attorney's office, seen numerous problems where we had election people and they would somehow do ballots wrong or sign off wrong, and ballots wouldn't be counted. So I think we would only be compounding problems. And lastly, I asked Mr. Ford to check with Bismarck and Fargo and also with Nelson, and they're running the election in the same way that we are. And it's my understanding that the entire state of North Dakota is running it without polling places. So I really don't see why we should be an exception. I think we should proceed along the same state guidelines. And from all indications, we're going to have a great turnout. Thank you.
Thank you. I agree with that. And, the comments that I've been getting have all been positive. And, you say it's problematic that if we went with the voting polls as well, but I think it's more than problematic. It just simply is not doable. And, given all of the concerns, the testing, all the options that go with that, it's simply not doable. And so, we all know what those are, and Ms. Nelson has handed us or provided us with some of the items that she sees as probably being problem areas as well. But, so getting back to where we were going with this, who responds?
I like your letter. If you need it in the form of a motion, I will make.
I don't think so. Do we think we need a motion on this? I don't see it
To
as
adopt the
needing
letter?
a motion. Well, every letter is going to be a little different because everyone's going to address different things. But it's the same theme throughout, I mean,
But we need to take a stand because.
But I think that we have an obligation and responsibility to contact these individuals, get back to them. I mean, we know there's always going to be individuals that aren't going to like, the choices that we made. And we accept that and we recognize it and we encourage them to speak or say those things, but we need to respond back to them. But it's just, I never know quite sure who responds because we're all getting the same letter.
Yeah.
And so, we all need to be on the same page, but somebody needs to respond to them. And again, because of the not being able to speak for the full commission, kinds of creates a problem. Because I could say, well, I personally feel, but, but it was a group decision. It was a board decision. So as a group, we're making decisions, so I can't really say, as an individual, this is how.
But then you should have it in the form of a motion, isn't that correct?
I don't know.
Did we adopt?
Well, I don't know that it needs to be a motion, but we should have a rule of thumb going forward for everybody that gets to be chair, or if we have designated as a responsibility of, and I'll say Mr. Ford in his spare time, but that's not what I'm insinuating at all, or I'm just saying somebody, be it the chair or be it Mr. Ford, I guess would be appropriate.
Madam Chair, this is Dave. May I have a comment?
Well, I know he's not elected. And he wasn't included in the letter. So, okay, I take that back, not Mr. Ford. So it needs to be a commissioner. And it would make sense that
Madam
he
Chair?
would be the chair. Yes, sir.
I think we can all respond. I liked your letter. I think as the chair, you're the one who can put this out there unless you knew that the board was all split. We need to keep in mind that the governor changed his stance on this just on Friday afternoon, okay? By that time, we were many days past the time that we could possibly get this done. But what's going to happen is we are going to be painted as a board that is trying to suppress the vote. And we aren't trying to do that. In fact, we all hope that we could get a record vote. But I already know what's going out there on the airwaves and social media and that kind of thing about the fact that, oh my gosh, we're not going to allow a vote in a polling place. But let's all keep in mind the other counties are doing the same thing. And Governor Burgum's language was, if you live in a county where you believe there is almost no health risk, and if you can execute it in a way that is safe, then talk to your county commissioners about opening a polling place. That's paraphrasing somewhat. But we are the #2 county in the state for cases, for one thing. And because this has come up so late, it's impossible for our voting people, Debbie Nelson and her staff, who are killing themselves already, to get it done. So I firmly believe we handled it right, and we just have to be honest with people and expect the fact that we're going to get criticism from people who just don't have the facts.
Yeah.
So,
and I don't think that, I mean, we know that that's part of it, and we understand, and like I say, I appreciate that people respond, likes or dislikes, sometimes there's answers there when they respond, and so we all learn from those. But, and you're right. I mean, people are going to find fault. Not everyone is going to agree. People speak to their rights, that they should be able to physically go to a polling place and, leave their ballot and all this other stuff. And I wholeheartedly agree. We all have that right, and should encourage that. But that doesn't give any of us the right to infringe on somebody else's health or medical or whatever, which is what you're going to have potentially if you have a polling place. And so I'm very comfortable with the decision that we made, in that we followed the governor's recommendation. That was a highly recommended decision that we made, and I'm comfortable with it. We're going to keep our public healthy, and it's for their benefit and ours, and plus the fact that by the time we learned that we had options, or there was an option, it was not possible to even go that route, and so that's all I can say on that. So are we back? So I can send out my letter, and can I respond to some of the others as well then, or?
Why can't the letter suffice for all of that?
Well, it does.
I agree.
I agree with Commissioner Ross. I think the letter could go out and you could change it just slightly and that the Grand Forks County Commission's position, and it is our position, or in essence, put that we're all in favor of what you are
Okay.
indicating there. So it doesn't fall on you, you're alone. But I think if the same letter can go out to each of the individuals, I don't think we have to address every single question that they may have.
Okay, all right.
Because that's just not going to change what we're able to do now. Now, we can talk about it down the road in the fall if for some reason this virus abates and we think there might be a possibility of it, then we can discuss it. But that's for another time.
That's for another time where you need to see what the situation is come fall. So,
What,
all right.
what would you think about putting that letter in the paper, in the newspaper?
I don't see a problem with that. I mean, I don't have a problem with it.
Well, I mean, it's going out to everybody.
Well, and there might be other people that are out there that feel the same way, and so maybe it would answer some of their questions, you know, I mean, people watch what you do, and there's always question marks, why did they do that, or whatever, and so maybe by putting something in the paper would be a good way to do it. You cover all the bases, and everybody would have the same information, and I think that would probably work well.
Maybe a letter to the editor.
Letter to the editor.
I would agree with that.
Same here.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So we'll leave it at, okay, thank you. Anything else you want to discuss on that?
No.
Okay, and
Sorry
so,
for that.
Mr. Engen, did we get your report?
No, I didn't think you cared there for one.
I do care, I care a lot.
No, I didn't have much. I was in that uplifting phone call with Mr. Falk on the airbase. And then we had a conference call on the court system yesterday. And last week I was at the All True virtual All True Partner spring meeting, which is just a Zoom meeting on what's going on out there, but I'll spare you the details given the time. So that's all.
Okay, thank you. And for me, on May 13th, I visited with Jonathan Worrell, who is conducting the annual state audit for the Grand Forks County books. And so the takeaway I got was he was very pleased with the results that he was finding and spoke very highly of Ms. Nelson and her team. So, and also on the 13th, we had a fair board meeting, and they are considering having maybe a virtual fair. So that's all still in the discussion stages, and they're doing their research on that. But I specifically wanted to let you know that they were able to go or to get all the carnival and the vendor contracts rescinded, or not rescinded, but rolled over into 2021 at no increased cost to the fair. So they were happy about that. And then you heard on the 14th, I participated, Commissioner Rost and myself, with the River City Speedway. And so I won't go on any further with that, but I know 4-H'ers, the carts and the horse folks are all going to reach out to Kari as well. And so we'll see more coming from them in the near future. And library board meeting is scheduled for tomorrow. The facility is still closed due to the library remodel project. And then tomorrow and Thursday, we start the 2021 budget meetings, and you all are aware of that. And so, and the times and Ms. Peach and I will participate and welcome and encourage all the commissioners to attend. Our next year budget's going to come with many challenges and unknowns, and so I think it's important that we have everybody that can be there, so that we can all have feedback on that one. So that's all I have. So next item then is correspondence. And we did get a letter from Red River Regional Council with respect to CDBG grant monies. And you all received a copy of that, and there's nothing, it was informational only. And then we got from NEDRIF an amended notice of their annual meeting, which is scheduled for May 20th. in Bismarck, and so I don't think we normally go attend those, do we?
Yeah.
Okay, and then I think you probably all got an email last night. That's when I got this one from the NACO annual conference that was scheduled for 2020, which has been canceled. So other than that, I don't have anything else. I should get the award for the longest meeting.
You should.
We always say the shortest meeting, but I get the longest, so sorry about that. May I have a motion to adjourn?
I make that motion.
Okay, do I have a second?
I'll second that motion.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second to adjourn. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, motion carried. Stay safe, everyone. See you tomorrow.
You too.
Yep, see you tomorrow.
See you tomorrow.
Yep.